Guys, today one common theme in the WNBA is how poorly officiated these games can be. The lack of competence from the people wearing the striped suits.
The Indiana Fever just pulled off a nail-biting 76-75 victory over the Los Angeles Sparks. But instead of celebrating the win, the talk of the night has been about the referees and what came after the game. With 0.1 seconds left on the clock, officials awarded LA a timeout in one of the most confusing, controversial decisions of the season.
Every time I watch a WNBA game, a thought crosses my mind when it comes to the officials, and that thought is, how much money do you have on this game? What prop bet did you place prior to suiting up tonight? What's the over/under, and are you concerned with a specific outcome?
Indiana was furious. Fans were stunned, and one Fever star couldn't hold back her frustration. That player was Sydney Colson. Despite being out for the season with a torn ACL, Colson jumped on social media and blasted the refs, mocking their decision with a fiery and hilarious post. But now, fans believe the WNBA could fine or punish her for her comments, and they are outraged. The Fever-Sparks game was already a tense battle, both teams fighting for playoff positioning. Indiana came in desperate to keep their momentum alive, and LA was equally hungry. The game went back and forth, and it came down to the final seconds. With the Fever up 76-75, the Sparks tried to set up one last possession. But here's where it got messy. The clock had already ticked down to virtually nothing, yet the referees decided to grant LA a timeout with 0.1 seconds remaining. From Indiana's perspective, this made no sense. They argued the time had clearly expired and the Sparks shouldn't have been awarded anything. To them, the refs weren't just making a questionable call, they were practically handing LA another shot at stealing the game. Now, 0.1 seconds isn't much, and the Sparks ultimately couldn't capitalize. Indiana walked away with the victory, but the damage was already done. The referees had created a storm of controversy with a decision that fans and players alike described as ridiculous. For Indiana, this wasn't just about one call. It felt like another example of officiating inconsistency in a season where players have already complained about unfair whistles, questionable replay decisions, and game-altering mistakes. And that's where Sydney Colson comes in.
The officials in the WNBA, yes, they're incompetent, yes, they're trash, but it always seems like there's some shady... They're so bad and so incompetent, it seems like there's shady business taking place behind the scenes. If the WNBA needs to investigate in anything, if somebody needs to investigate in anything regarding the WNBA, it's about how dirty the hands are of the officials.
Sydney Colson didn't play in this game. She couldn't. The 36-year-old veteran is sidelined with a torn ACL, ending her season early. But just because she wasn't on the court doesn't mean she wasn't watching. And when she saw what happened at the end, she let the world know exactly how she felt. On her official X account, Colson wrote, "He ran in twice trying to give the game away, and that's what had me weak, haha. Would it have been thrice had time allowed for it?" She didn't stop there. Anticipating people might not understand the word thrice, she doubled down. Thrice means 3 times. I see a lot of y'all who respond to me with idiotic shh. So I knew you didn't know the definition of thrice since you're dumb. This wasn't just a critique, it was a roast. Colson made it clear she thought the referees were trying to tilt the game away from Indiana, and she did it with her trademark mix of sarcasm, humor, and edge. The post blew up instantly with fans laughing at her savage word choice and sharp delivery. But it also raised eyebrows because the WNBA has a history of disciplining players and coaches for publicly criticizing referees. And that's what leads us to the next part of the story: potential punishment. When Sydney Colson fired off her sarcastic thrice tweet, fans didn't just laugh, they immediately braced themselves. Why? Because the WNBA has a long and well-documented history of fining players and coaches who criticize referees. And it doesn't matter whether you're an all-star, a rookie, or a veteran sitting out injured. If you call out the officials, the league usually comes knocking with a bill. We've seen this happen time and time again. Earlier this season, Sophie Cunningham was fined after voicing her frustrations about officiating decisions that, in her words, cost us the game. Even Stephanie White, the Fever's head coach, has been fined for post-game comments about referees. And it's not just Indiana. Stars across the league, including MVPs like Ija Wilson, have hinted at poor officiating, only to walk a tightrope of what they can say without being punished.
Sophie Cunningham has now been fined 4 times this season? She's had 4 separate fines this season. And she got fined for comments on a podcast episode about referees. And it wasn't even like it was that bad.
The logic from the league's perspective is clear. They want to protect the integrity of the officials. The WNBA doesn't want its referees to be publicly undermined, especially at a time when the league is drawing more attention than ever before. If players were allowed to air grievances freely, the fear is that every close game would end with a Twitter storm about the refs, overshadowing the actual basketball. But here's the problem. Fans see this approach as backwards. Instead of addressing officiating mistakes directly, the league too often punishes players for speaking up. That creates a perception of silencing rather than accountability. Fans don't want to hear about fines, they want to hear about fixes. This is why Coulson's situation feels like a powder keg. She's not even playing this season due to her ACL tear. She's speaking as a frustrated veteran, giving her honest reaction to what fans themselves were screaming about in real time. If the WNBA fines her for this, it won't just look heavy-handed. It'll look petty. And yet, based on history, it wouldn't be surprising at all. A $500 fine here, a $1,000 fine there. These penalties may not bankrupt players, but they send a chilling message.
Well, we got another gem that has come to us by way of Sophie Cunningham's new podcast, Show Me Something. It's pretty clear. Every time one of these episodes drops, we better have our ears on because something's going to come out of it. And in case you guys do not remember, it wasn't that long ago that Sophie Cunningham made this little TikTok video. And in said TikTok video, and you can see right here, this was July 23rd, she put this up and said she got fined $500 by the WNBA for criticizing the refs.
Keep quiet. For a league that is finally building momentum, finally capturing mainstream attention, thanks to stars like Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, the optics of fining someone like Coulson for a sarcastic tweet could backfire massively. So when fans started tweeting things like, "This is going to cost you $500," or "I got your fine, Sid, don't worry," it wasn't just jokes. It was an acknowledgement of how predictable the WNBA has become when it comes to silencing criticism of officiating. And that's exactly why this moment is about more than just Coulson. It's about the league's entire philosophy on transparency, accountability, and free expression. If the WNBA thought Sydney Coulson's post would go unnoticed, they couldn't have been more wrong. Fans didn't just see it, they ran with it, turning her thrice jab into a rallying cry against questionable refereeing and the league's culture of punishing players who speak up. Within minutes, Coulson's post was trending among Fever fans. Replies flooded in, some laughing at her sharp wit, others praising her for saying what players on the court couldn't say out loud. The tone quickly shifted from humor to outrage as fans began speculating about the inevitable fine. "This is going to cost you $500, one user wrote. Another chimed in, "I got your fine if the weak-ass W tries to come after you." Someone else even joked about starting a GoFundMe for Fever players, since fines for referee criticism have become so common. But beneath the jokes was a serious frustration. Fans feel like officiating in the WNBA has been inconsistent all season long. They've watched end-of-game calls swing results, replay reviews take forever only to deliver confusing outcomes, and stars like Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell get hammered in the paint without a whistle. When players and coaches call it out, instead of fixing it, the league fines them. That's what fans are tired of, and in Coulson's case, the frustration is even sharper. Because she wasn't even in the game, she's injured. She's rehabbing. She was sitting at home like the rest of us, watching the broadcast and reacting in real time. Her critique wasn't some planned press conference soundbite. It was an authentic, emotional, and hilarious reaction to what everyone just saw. Punishing her for that would feel absurd. That's why fans have rallied around her so fiercely. They don't just agree with her critique, they see her as a voice for them.
Walking out there, and then there's Leah Boston quickly to say, "Oh, you're not get back here. Game's over." look at the referee right over here, pointing at her. You see the guy to the right? Point. You, Caitlin Clark. You. They better not cut aerial powers, by the way.
She said what the fan base was already yelling at their TVs. The officiating nearly gave that game away. And if the league comes down on her for it, fans will see it as proof that the WNBA cares more about protecting referees' reputations than listening to its players and supporters. The timing couldn't be worse either. The WNBA is in the middle of its biggest growth spurt ever. Viewership is surging, ticket sales are breaking records, and the Fever are at the center of it all. To slap a fine on a Fever veteran right now, for a tweet that fans loved, would only fuel the narrative that the league is out of touch with the people who are driving this new wave of interest. In short, the fans have spoken, and they're not just behind Sydney Colson, they're daring the WNBA to fine her because if it happens, the outrage will only grow louder. So what's next in this saga? Right now, all eyes are on the WNBA office. Will they issue a fine? Will they let it slide? Or will they finally acknowledge the elephant in the room? The need for better officiating transparency? If history is any guide, a fine is very possible. The WNBA has consistently fined players for less. But here's the twist. This isn't just any season. This is the most watched, most discussed WNBA season in history. Caitlin Clark has brought millions of new fans into the fold. The Fever are suddenly national news, and that means every decision the league makes is under a microscope. If they fine Colson, the backlash could be massive. Headlines won't read Colson criticizes referees. They'll read WNBA punishes injured player for funny tweet. That's not a good look for a league that's trying to present itself as authentic, player-driven, and fan-friendly. On the other hand, if they let it slide, it could be seen as a turning point. A moment where the league recognizes that players should be allowed to express themselves without fear of punishment. After all, Colson didn't curse out the referees or make personal attacks. She made a witty, sarcastic comment about a call everyone agreed was questionable. Letting it go would send the message, "We hear you." We're not here to silence players. We're here to make the game better. There's also a bigger conversation looming. Why doesn't the WNBA have an accountability system for referees, like the NBA's last 2-minute report? If officials are going to make controversial calls that swing games, fans and players deserve explanations. Without that, frustration builds, players vent, and the cycle of fines continues. For Sydney Colson, though, the outcome is almost secondary. She's already won in the court of public opinion. Fans love her for saying what they were thinking. Teammates and players around the league are nodding in agreement, even if they won't say it publicly. And if she does get fined, fans have already promised to cover it. Some are even joking about setting up recurring fundraisers because they expect players to keep getting punished for telling the truth. The question isn't whether Sydney Colson is right. Everyone knows she is. The real question is whether the WNBA will continue punishing honesty or finally embrace it.
Ladies and gentlemen, please back off!
Now, something that I'm noticing here, it seems like security is a little bit more tight around Caitlin Clark in this video.